Hey guys, welcome to the channel. My name is Andrew, and today we are going to be taking a look at the X5 microphone wireless system, seeing some of the claims that they have right on the packaging and making sure that they're true, and really just comparing it to just a direct XLR cable, because for 200 bucks, if this thing works, that's amazing. All right, so straight out of the box, first impressions are that they're pretty small, which is great because, you know, this side, which is the receiver, that's gonna be on the console recording side, but this side's gonna be on the microphone. If we just grab this microphone, so this is a shotgun microphone that my wife uses for voiceover a lot. Ooh, fits in there firmly, which is nice and isn't too heavy, and she can just kind of do voiceover just like that. I'm very interested to see how well this works. All right, diving a little further into the box, it looks like we have a single USB cable with a split, so you can charge both of them at the same time, which is great. And then just kind of some random documentation. It looks like they're claiming 3 to 7 hours of battery life on this thing. So assuming that's true, that's amazing. It looks like it's dependent on the power draw from the microphones, which makes sense because, again, this is the condenser version. So the transmitter here has phantom power built in, which is really nice. Just straight away, the one downside that I'm seeing is there doesn't, for some reason, appear to be a way to turn phantom power off on this, which means you're gonna have to have one version for condenser microphones that require phantom power and one for dynamic microphones. Now, technically, most dynamic microphones will be completely fine just if you send them phantom power and it just won't use it. It'll just reject it and you'll be fine. However, if you had a ribbon microphone, for example, you really don't want to do this to it because it very well could damage it beyond repair. All right, let's see what else they claim. The way that these work is through actually a Wi-Fi signal. So it's using the 2.4 gigahertz Wi-Fi band. It looks like on these, if you turn them on, there's little numbers. Maybe you can see that, I don't know. And right now it's on 1. And if you hit it, it will kind of bounce between all the different numbers. They are saying that you can use up to 6 of these at a time. So you can there are 6 options, you can select which number you want, it'll assign it, and then you can use up to 6. I also just want to say this company did reach out and send me these for free. However, I'm under no obligation whatsoever to speak positively about them or anything. These are going to be my true, honest review of this product. If I don't think it's any good, I'll let you know. And if I think it's solid, great. So now I'm just gonna jump into testing these here in the studio to see basically how I can break it. All right, well, it's been a couple days later, and I found some pretty interesting stuff. So first of all, the biggest question I have with anything like this that's gonna be a wireless solution that's cheaper is I get worried about the latency. On the box, they say that these are about 5 milliseconds of latency. A good rule of thumb when it comes to latency in a live setting is, especially if you're using in-ears, you really don't want to cross much more than that 5 millisecond mark. So this is kind of at the outer limit of what is acceptable for wireless. But, you know, for the price, they're usable. Something else I've found is that they're just so easy to set up. I love them for that reason. You just flip on the receiver, flip on the transmitter, and there's little lights that have numbers on them. Just make sure that they're the same number, done. There's no need to get out like your wireless workbench and figure out the right frequencies for the receivers and the senders and like what's acceptable in your area, and like none of that happens with these. These are using 2.4 gigahertz Wi-Fi. They just work. Something that was a little bit of a concern for me at the beginning, but turned out to just be great, is how they function as far as like gain levels and stuff. So there is no gain function on these. But the good news is that they basically transmit the exact same as an XLR cable. I found there to be about a 1 dB difference. They tend to have it be 1 dB louder on average than an XLR cable. That is not something you're gonna notice in 99% of scenarios. It's plug and play and it just works. I love that. Another thing that seems pretty great about these things is that the battery life actually seems to last a pretty good amount of time. So it lasts from what I've heard from people that have used these regularly, about 5+ hours. The only negative that I see with that is that they're rechargeable, which generally is a positive thing. But if you were to get into a scenario where, you accidentally left them on in your bag going to a gig or something, showed up and they were dead, you're gonna just have to be charging these, hoping that they charge enough in time, instead of just being able to replace the batteries. So that is a slight knock against, but I think for most people, this is the preferred way anyway. So overall, I've been saying generally really positive things about them. However, there are obviously some downsides. I mean, look, these things cost $200 for a fully wireless microphone setup. There has to be some drawbacks. The biggest one is range. Honestly, maybe range isn't even the best way of saying it. It's really just the fact that they use a Wi-Fi signal instead of an actual dedicated radio signal. I did a quick test with these in this space. So I basically put the receiver right on the desk and took the transmitter, hooked it up into that microphone, and walked around this room. And then I went out through the doors in the back right behind me there, open and closed. They're basically just like 2x4s that make that door. So I went out there, closed the door, walked around in the like kind of living room area that's out there. And then there is kind of like a little bit of a wine cellar room that is all rock. So I walked into there and you'll hear kind of the difference of how that all happened. All right, check. The microphone is right up against my lips for volume and frequency response consistency. This is currently right next to it. And let's start walking. All right, walking to the back of the room. So this is still in the studio, back of the room. Check. All right, let's go out the doors. I'm not going to know if this works until I check it later. All right, going to close the doors. All right, check. 1, 2, 3. All right, this is a stone basically room, so there may be different sound a little bit, but it should be pretty close. This microphone is very specific. All right, we're going to go in the wine cellar, which should be a pretty good test. So I am completely... So yeah, not really great. I mean, I was never more than probably 30 feet away, maybe 40 at the very most. However, this house is probably a worst case scenario. It is built with rock and huge wooden beams, and Wi-Fi in general hates this house, so it makes sense that these would struggle. I also know DJs that use these to basically make their speakers wirelessly transmit over large distances, and in an open field where there's, nothing in the way, I've seen them go well over 100 feet and have no issues at all. Now let's talk about the claim that they made on the box, which said 20 hertz to 20,000 hertz, which is in general the human hearing range. Most audio consoles and DAWs, they generally function in that range. So that's all we're really worried about. And in my testing here, it gave me all of that. So it gave me perfectly flat line between 20 hertz and 20K, no issues whatsoever. It transmitted just like an XLR cable. However, I did a little bit of testing with these in my apartment, and that apartment has tons of Wi-Fi signals going on everywhere. Every apartment has their own router, and the reality is that it didn't quite hold up as well there. So here's a graph of how it compared in the apartment to an XLR cable. And you'll see basically from 200 down, it starts tapering down audio. And when you get down to the really low stuff, we're cutting almost 15 dB. Something else that was interesting is it actually added extra right around that 20K range. So that is strange, but not as significant. The lower end stuff, again, it's still there. It just for some reason turned it down. Which is just strange. It is correctable with EQ, so it's not the end of the world, but the fact that it did this at all is just a strange variation and shows the lack of consistency that you could potentially get with this in a busy Wi-Fi area. Also, keep in mind, I had these right next to each other. This was not, 50 feet away through an apartment building. This was literally sitting on a table about this far away from each other. So this was a best case scenario in that environment. And it seemed like it just cut the amount of data that it sent between each other. And so it started going for the ends. But look, again, We're talking about a $200 solution here to a problem where if you really need it to work in all scenarios, we're looking at something like Shure Accent, which is literally 15 times more expensive than this. So all things considered, they've done pretty well. So at the end of the day, do I recommend them? Honestly, I think it really just depends on your specific situation. If you are in an environment where you know that you can set this up so that it will have a line of sight to the stage and it's not very far and it's not super congested with a bunch of Wi-Fi signals, for $200, I don't see how you can possibly beat this. And my recommendation would honestly be just buying it through Amazon because the return policy is so good, testing it out. If you like it, great, keep it. And if it doesn't work out for you, just send it back. It's $200 and you can get the money back anyway. So if you're interested in checking that out at all, I have links down in the description for the dynamic and condenser versions of this. And I'm also going to throw in a link for the in-ear version of this. Now, some of you have your microphone setup all set up, and that's great, but you're using stage monitors and it's really messing with the sound in your room. There is a product that this exact same company makes with the same technology that is basically the opposite. So it's a little in-ear pack that uses the same 2.4 Wi-Fi signal and gives you the ability to have wireless in-ears for right around that $200 mark again. So those could be even more useful for you possibly than these, so I'm gonna throw that link down there as well. If you've made it to the end of this video, thank you so much for watching. I really appreciate it. I typically make more traditional tutorial videos about how to do audio mixing and processing for both live and studio. If you're at all interested in anything like that, go ahead and subscribe to the channel as well and hit that bell if you wanna be notified whenever I post. Well, that's all I got for today, so I'll see you guys in the next one.